everyone, my name is Amber, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my 2022 stats. I love these kind of videos. I try to do them quarterly. I tend to sort of forget during quarter 3, which is why one hasn't happened for a while. But today I am sharing all of the stats with you. So what I'm going to do is first of all look at my Storygraph stats really quickly, Goodreads stats, just for a quick scroll through of everything that happens or everything that I read in 2022. And then we'll go into my in-depth detailed stats that I record myself. And then I want to show you my 2023 spreadsheet so I can show you what I'm keeping the same, what's going to be different, and how I've adapted the spreadsheet to meet my needs. Because my needs for reading stats change every single year, so I like to add or remove things depending on what I find that I'm interested in. To start off with, here are my Storygraph stats. Storygraph says that I read 149 books. This is incorrect. I read 152, I think. I don't know where the discrepancy is because Goodreads says something else as well. Let's just go with that. I'm not too bothered, to be honest, because my reading spreadsheet captures everything that I need. In terms of moods, I think my highest mood was mysterious, which will be because of all the thrillers that I'm reading. And then I read 58 dark books, 48 adventurous, 43 emotional, 40 tense, and the others are a lot smaller. The pace of the books that I was reading was mainly medium, followed by fast, and then I only read 8% slow books. Most of the books that I read were between 300 and 500 pages. I only read a few 500-page plus books because I haven't been reading much fantasy in 2022. And then I read quite a few short books, actually, a lot more than normal, and I'm guessing that's mainly graphic novels. I don't tend to go for shorter reads, really. 90% of the books that I read were fiction and 10% were non-fiction, which was more than one non-fiction a month, which I'm very pleased with. And then the genres, I really don't like the way Storygraph does genres. The highest is actually fantasy, apparently, followed by thriller, mystery, romance, contemporary, science fiction, short stories, which isn't a genre. Young adult is also up near the top, that's not a genre, and I hate that it's included. LGBTQIA+, also not a genre, but it's probably good that it's labelled, I suppose. So it was a whole mixture of things. We'll go into more detail in my next spreadsheet. My most read authors were John Layman. I don't actually know who that is, let me look it up. Oh, okay, he did the 2 graphic novels, so that makes sense because I read like 5 or 6 of those. Followed by Brandon Sanderson. I'm surprised that's so high this year. I've apparently read 4 books by him, but I think 3 of those would be White Sand. I've read 4 Elle Kennedy books because I read the entire Off Campus series, 4 Megan Miranda books because I'm doing a project on her books, and then Neil Schusterman and Taylor Jenkins Reid I've read 3 books from each. Here's a quick chart showing the number of books and pages read by month. February was my highest for both, and it looks like either November or June were my lowest. Again, more on this in a bit. And then here is my star ratings stuff. You can see the majority of my reads were 3 stars, followed by 4 stars, and that feels about right for 2022, to be honest. I read quite a few 5-star books actually compared to normal, but some of the books also were just basically average. Now we're going to quickly look at my year-end books on Goodreads. This doesn't include much detail, but I like to include it in these videos anyway. So Goodreads says I read 153 books and read 49,000 pages. My shortest book was a very short story called The Best Girls, which is an Amazon original in one of their short story collections. I quite enjoyed this. And my longest was House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J Maas, which was 805 pages. Didn't love that book. My average book length was 320, which does sound about right, but I think that's skewed by the graphic novels. I normally read books that are in the 300 to 400 range, so I would expect this to be about 350 normally, but I did read a lot of graphic novels in February. My most shelved book is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I reread that in 2022. My least shelved is a book that's coming out in 2023 called Home. My average rating was dead on 3.5, apparently. Goodreads doesn't allow half stars. If it did, this would be slightly different, I think. My highest rated on Goodreads is Know My Name by Chanel Miller, a fantastic book. My first review of the year was Iron Widow, which I gave 2 stars, and as you can see, I did not think it was feminism. And then really quickly, here's a quick scroll through of every single book that I read in 2022. My first 5-star read of the year was Kindred, followed by The Toll. I reread Daisy Jones and the Six. I love that one. I also loved Moon of the Crusted Snow, by the way, which is above it. It just wasn't 5 stars. Know My Name by Chanel Miller was fantastic. A River in Darkness was another 5-star read. The River of Silver, S.A. Chakraborty's new book, came out, and I read that. Galatia by Madeline Miller was really, really good. I enjoyed The Love Hypothesis. Blood Hour was good. Evicted was very interesting. I didn't realise I read that in 2022 actually. Ariadne was a massive disappointment. Dead Silence, absolutely fantastic. Would highly recommend that. In an Instant was also quite good. Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemisin, really good. Evelyn Hugo we've already spoken about. The Bookish Life of Nina Hill was a good romance contemporary book. I reread Tempest, which I gave 5 stars when I first read it, and then I just kept the same rating because when I first read it I was more of the target audience, so I left it at 5. The Last to Vanish was a very good book about a hiking community. I read The Yellow Wallpaper, and it's one that I probably want to reread. It was very, very confusing. The Last Bear was brilliant. My last review of the year was apparently The Woman They Couldn't Silence, but that's just the last time I updated Goodreads, so that's why that's there. And then we're on to my spreadsheet, which I absolutely love. So I originally got this from Hardback Hoarder quite a few years ago, and instead of going back to her site or her document, I've actually just copied my old one and made whichever adjustments that I need. So it looks quite different to hers now. So what I included in 2022, which will be different in 2023, is title, author, pages read, hours listened, rating, month read, main genre, location, state, intended audience, series, situations, like a bunch of stuff about series, format, release year, diversity included in the book, type of publication, publisher, author race, author status, how I acquired it, money saved, readathon, reread, trigger warnings. A few of those will be different in 2023 and I'll go into that later on. But now let's look at my stats, which look really cool, to be honest. I read 154 books in 2022. I don't know where the discrepancies with Goodreads and Storygraph are, if I've mislabeled something, or I've gone through all of the books on my spreadsheet and compared them to both websites and I cannot see where it's gone wrong. So that's a bit of a shame, but this is the most accurate. 13 of those books were rereads. I got really into rereading in 2022. I didn't used to do it much, but now I do. I bought 137 books, which we'll talk about in a minute. I'm embarrassed. I read 43,852 pages and listened to 207 hours on audio. I started 40 series in 2022. I finished 9 and I continued 8. Some of those 40 series that I started are ones that I continued or finished though, because it doesn't really split them up. You can see here the books that I read by month. February was my highest because I was going for 28 books in 28 days. As you can see, I didn't quite manage it, but I'm going to try again this year. My next best month was May, where I read 18 books, followed by August, where I read 16. I have noticed I tend to go in like in a quarterly sort of pattern where I peak and then it drops down and then it peaks again. Don't know why that happens, but it's just very, very interesting. I don't know if it's something to do with work or the way that my life is, or if it's just the way that I read. I'm not quite sure. 68.6% of the books that I read were physical copies, followed by audio and ebook, which are equal. I went through a massive ebook reading slump in 2022 because Sarah J Maas put me in one. I'm coming out of that now, but it's a struggle. Also, prior to 2022, I was actually struggling to listen to audiobooks because I wasn't going into the office that much, but now I'm going back into the office twice a week, and it was 3 times a week earlier on in 2022. So it's been a good opportunity to listen to ebooks in the car. 71% of the books I read were adult books. This is to be expected. I'm moving away from YA and middle grade. I have been for years, but I still read 20% YA and I'm happy with that. I do quite like diving back into YA, and I have found some really good books and potentially all-time favourites as well. So I'm not mad, and I'm not really tracking it or aiming for anything. I'm just seeing where it takes me. Here is the split for source of the book, like where I got them from. As you can see here, I mainly read books that I had bought in 2022, which is good because I was aiming to read books as soon as I bought them. And the next highest is owned pre-2022, which tells me that I am reading from my own TBR. I'm just bringing a lot of books in. I also read quite a few NetGalley books, which obviously I got from the publisher, and 14% of the books that I read were from the library, which I'm very pleased with. I really enjoy supporting my local library. It also saves me money on books. 83% of the books that I read were traditionally published, followed by indie and self. I can't remember what it was the year before, but I don't know. But I have a feeling the self and indie is increasing. I read mainly standalone novels in 2022. Not by much, but that was the majority, and to be honest, I wish that wasn't the case. I really enjoy reading series and marathoning them, I just never do. And I definitely need to read more series in 2023 in order to finish some off and also recap some for recaptains, because I'm falling behind on series. I am tracking this a bit better in 2023. This is my count of diversity. So what I've done here is I've categorized it into the type of diversity that is represented in the book. The highest representation is combo, which could be a mixture of any kind of diversity, followed by race, followed by mental health, and 18% of the books that I read had no diversity at all. Some of those were non-fiction, like historical non-fiction. So if I'm reading something about like Prince Harry, which I wasn't, but as an example, It's probably not got any diversity in it because I'm not counting rich people as diverse. But otherwise I've got a good mixture here. I would like to read more with disabled main characters and also more about class representation as well, particularly non-fiction, but some of that did fall into the combo category. Next we have my star ratings, and I'm really pleased with this. I had a really good year in 2022. As you can see here, the majority of the books that I read were 3 stars, which is fine, that's a good read. And then the next highest is 4 stars. And then you can see these ugly colours here, the orange, red and ugly pink. They're the bad ratings, so 2 or below, 2.5 or below. And there's barely any. I'm really pleased with that. I had a really good reading year. It says here my average rating was 3.47, so Goodreads was actually quite accurate, which was a surprise. I would quite like to get that up a bit higher in 2023. I'm not sure if I will because I'm reading a lot of backlist books again, which is what contributed to this being a bit lower. I gave a lot of those 3 stars because while they weren't particularly great for me now, I probably would have liked them a bit more when I was younger and I didn't really want to rate them low. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out in 2023. These are the genres that I read. The highest one is thriller at 17%, and then the next highest is contemporary at 11%, and then all the rest are tiny because I read so many different genres. What I've got here is contemporary crime, dystopian fantasy, climate fiction, historical horror, humour, which I didn't think I had read, but maybe I have, romance, magical realism, mystery, non-fiction, paranormal, literary, sci-fi thriller and urban fantasy. I think in the coming year this isn't going to change much. I'm probably going to read a bit more fantasy because I'm trying to finish off some series, and urban fantasy might also climb a little bit higher because there's a few series that I do want to continue from when I was younger, so that'll be interesting to see. Here I have author race or ethnicity. I have kind of grouped them together because while they are different it's still quite similar. As you can see here, 65% of the authors that I read from were white, and then some quick maths, 35% are non-white. I would like to get this to 50-50 eventually. I don't know if anyone else is feeling this, but I'm really struggling to find thrillers written by people of colour. This might be my poor research, admittedly, but I'm really struggling. Particularly newer release thrillers as well. I feel like there aren't too many because I do try to keep up with thriller new releases. So this has been quite challenging, I think. From the authors of colour, I do have a decent mixture, I think. I do have an unknown category because some authors don't actually publicise their race or ethnicity, which is absolutely fair. Like, it's none of my business, to be honest, like just for these stats. But it is something that I do try to research if I can to see how the author identifies. And if they don't, I just put unknown because, again, like, they're not obligated to share any of this. This is just for me to make sure that I am reading as diversely as I want to be. I know there has been some conversation about like how many different sort of labels, races, ethnicities there are, but what I've been doing is I've been researching how people identify and then adding it to this. So instead of having like other, I've been adding it directly to the chart. So this is how people have said that they identify or what their background is, because anything other than the author's own words just seems a bit weird to me. And here we have author status. I mainly read from authors that I'd read from before. I read a few debut authors, almost a third of my reading, and then some authors were new to me. I'm happy with this. I don't really need to change anything. I do like to support debut authors, but I have noticed that some publishers go a bit wild with debut authors, and I feel like they could be promoting their already established authors instead with their second, third, fourth books. That said, I'm really pleased that these new authors do have the publicity and support that they are getting. I just hope they don't get dropped afterwards. Then we have a graph on publication years. I can never get this thing to go in order. I almost did in my 2023 chart, but then it all went wrong again. My highest year is new releases for 2022, followed by 2021, 2020. So I'm definitely reading newer releases. The oldest book I think that I read was from 1892. I can't remember what that was. I've read one from the 70s, which I think was Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. But yeah, I can't remember what this one from 1892 was. Oh, that will be The Yellow Wallpaper. Duh. And then we have a publisher graph because I like to know who the books are being published by. The biggest chunk of this chart is Penguin Random House because they own absolutely everything. I try to go for like the parent company rather than all of the offshoots so that it's more accurate. And then we have Amazon and HarperCollins tied, followed by I think Simon & Schuster. So no surprises there really, apart from Amazon. I'm surprised I read so many from Amazon. And then we have my location charts, which I'm going to swap over to the computer for because they don't show up properly on my tablet. So just 1 second. Okay, we're going to start off with my map of the US states that I'm tracking. I think this is a new thing for this year because I can't remember doing it last year. Maybe I did though. So at the top, starting from top left, going to the right, we have Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, California, which I read the most from, 12 whole books from California, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. Then we have Texas, which I read quite a few from, and Louisiana randomly, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. I already said New York twice actually. So yeah, I'm missing a bunch in the middle. I haven't read anything from Alaska or Hawaii, but I would really like to in 2023, so I'm going to try to do that. Then we're going to very quickly take a quick look at South America, because I only read one country from South America, and that was Bolivia, which is a shame. I find it very difficult to find translations, particularly genre fiction rather than literary, set in South America. So that's something I'm going to try to be more conscious of in 2023, and we can see what I can do. I have read from South America previously, but not very much. And then we're on to Europe. Starting at the top, we have Iceland, which is a lovely country. I went to it last year and adored it. I want to go back. It's honestly fantastic and beautiful. United Kingdom, where I've read quite a few from, Ireland, going back up to Sweden, and then Poland, and then over to France, Switzerland, Italy, and Greece. So I didn't do too well in Europe in 2022. I normally read a few more from there, but maybe that will change in 2023, or I can focus on different continents. Moving on over to my map of Asia. This is another continent where I didn't do amazingly. So starting in Jordan, we have India, Nepal, and China, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan. And then down at the bottom, we have Malaysia. So again, I could be reading a few more from Southeast or Middle East Asia, I think. I'd like to get to a few of these countries because they're less well known and less well covered, I think. And then we're moving on to my map of the entire world for 2022, which I love. I just love looking at this one, even though it's not the most populated of all of my maps, but we'll get onto that in a second. So starting, I guess, at the most north, we have Svalbard, which is, I think, a separate country, but it's heavily connected to Norway. And I read a book set on one of these tiny islands, so either this one or the other one down here. I'm not actually sure which. Then we have Iceland again, Canada, US, Mexico. Not much in Central America, to be honest. Over here we have Fiji, and then Bolivia in South America. There's not much in Africa at all, it's just Ghana, so I need to do better with that in 2023. And then get up to Europe. We've already covered these, so just a very quick look at them. Over here, again, in Asia, we've covered all of these countries, so I don't really need to read them out again. And then going down, we have Australia and Fiji again, because it's on both sides of the map. Not bad, to be honest, but I do want to show you what my overall country map looks like, so that covers all of the countries that I've ever read from that I can remember, or at least the ones I have been tracking. I honestly love this map so much, and I'm actually missing a couple of countries, so I'll have to add those in a second. So this is what it looks like. It's quite well populated, but again, South America and Africa are lacking. There are a few new countries that weren't on my 2022 map, such as the Dominican Republic, we've got the Bahamas, we've also got Ecuador and Tobago, I think that is in there, French Guyana, still don't know how to pronounce it, Peru, Bolivia again. Over in Africa, we've got Botswana, Nigeria, Ghana again, Egypt, and then the new ones in Europe, I believe, are the Netherlands, and is that it? I think it is. Then moving over, we've got Jordan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Over there, I think we should have Bangladesh, but I don't think that's on there yet, so I'll have to add that in a second. China, Japan we had before. We've also got Malaysia and Vietnam, which I just skipped over, and also New Zealand. So I'm just going to quickly add in Bangladesh, because I read from Bangladesh this year, actually in 2023, and Romania as well. So those two new countries are also populated. You can see Bangladesh there, and then Romania. So the goal is to always be adding to this map. Again, like I said, I need to do better in various regions. I'd like to read, I've got something planned for Chile, potentially Brazil as well, and then a couple from Spain, I think. I want to read a couple from Morocco, just read more from Africa in general, and then the Nordics too. And once I populate Russia, I think that will make the map look a lot more impressive because it's such a massive country. definitely want to read from the Philippines. And I think I've got one in mind for Cambodia as well. Okay, and now we're back here very, very briefly to talk about the books that I acquired in 2022, how much I spent on them, how much I saved at the library, and then we'll talk about my 2023 spreadsheet really, really quickly. So in total, I bought or acquired 137 books in 2022. This is because I keep going charity shop shopping. I keep buying books for £1 in a charity shop. I only spent £438.75 on these books. Some of them were bought from gift cards or using gift cards, and others were bought for me, but otherwise most of these are from charity shops, which is why it's so cheap. I'm gonna work out an average of what this is per book, and I'll put this on the screen now. I think that's a pretty great deal, to be honest. I don't tend to buy too many new releases unless it's around my birthday time. I've read 37% of the books that I bought in 2022, and I'm aiming to get that higher throughout the next year because I'm trying to read books close to the time that I buy them. And I borrowed 25 books from the library that I read. I didn't count the ones that I gave back unread, and I saved £188 from using the library. Overall, I'm quite pleased with this. I'm not pleased by how many books that I bought. I'm going to try to keep that under 100 in 2023 unless I do really well with my reading. I really want to focus on my own physical TBR that I have now and get that down, so I need to calm down with the charity shop book buying. That being said, I am going to the charity shops in January, so we'll see how that works out. Okay, and now we're on to the book tracker for 2023. This is just gonna be a really quick look at the tracker. I just want to show you what I've done differently. So at the top, I'll quickly go through the tabs. We have title, author, pages read, hours listened, rating, and then I've moved reread over so that it's close by to the front. Month read, main genre, location, state, because I love tracking those, audience, serials, so all of the series information is here. I've added series DNF in case I want to DNF a series after a really bad book. Format, release year, diversity is the same, type of publication and publisher is the same, author race, status, how I acquired it, money saved. Goodreads updated is one that I've added this year because I always forget to update Goodreads, and after the situation I was in at the end of last year trying to figure out where I had missed, which books I had missed, I would like to try and keep Goodreads and Storygraph up to date. And I've also added a column for reviewed, so if I've reviewed it anywhere, so my blog, YouTube, Goodreads, I want to at least have spoken about these books somewhere and put down my thoughts because that really helps the authors. Yearly stats, I have changed just a little bit, not too much. I've added average rating to my totals, which will be updated throughout the year. I've added series DNF'd. I've added a series goal because I'm trying to read 13 book series in particular this year, and so I'm tracking that to see how close I am to that goal. Otherwise, I think I just changed the colours, you know, I didn't really do much. Oh, and I've almost got the publication years in the right order. There's just one outlier there and I don't know why. Monthly stats is still exactly the same. I haven't changed those at all. Books acquired, I think I've deleted a column, otherwise that's all the same. And then I've also added a series tracker, which I copied from Ali, the original creator of the spreadsheet. I've been really struggling to figure out the best way to track series. Previously I had an entirely separate spreadsheet for that, and I didn't really like the way that it turned out. So I just copied hers, and then I'm sure over time I'll add to it, add a few stats and graphs and things, but for now this is how it's looking. So over on the left I've got sagas, so anything longer than a trilogy, then I've got a whole list of trilogies, then I've got duologies, and then I've got graphic novels because those series seem to go on forever. They could go under saga, but I wanted to keep them a bit separate. And then at the top you can see that I've got total series, so that's all of the ones that are listed here that I am currently tracking. I haven't included ones that I've completed because this is just for 2023, and once I do finish the series this year, hopefully I can take them off and it goes to total completed. So I know that I said I'm only trying to read 13 series in particular in 2023. I've also listed ones that I'm potentially interested in, just so that they're here and can remind me, and I don't have to keep going looking for them for all of the information. It's just a good reminder to have them all in one place, and then if I don't finish some of these I can copy them over into the next spreadsheet for next year. So that's a very in-depth look at my statistics. Let me know if you've got any thoughts on any of these. Go and check out Ali's video on her 2023 spreadsheet because it's honestly fantastic. She's got even more stuff than I do, and I think she's only charging about $5 for her spreadsheet this year, which is a steal. I would highly recommend going to check it out. If you like statistics, obviously. If you'd rather live in ignorance, then by all means do so, because this is a lot of work to keep this updated. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll speak to you all in the next video. Bye!